The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by UMass Amherst School of Public Policy, offering graduate programs in public affairs, public policy and administration, data analytics, and computational social science. umass.edu/SPP.
Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. Later in the show, it's been a minute since we got to blind taste wine, but we're at it again in Lenox at Dare Bottle Shop and Provisions with Boyd Pearson and Emerson Stevens, where we'll check out the red blends of redolent wines.
And Live Music Friday brings Jenna Nicholls to the studios with her classically styled folk before you can catch her tomorrow evening at the Egremont Barn.
But first, we try our best to capture the cosmos and the past in a glob of glass.
At the Fine Arts Museum at the Springfield Museums.
My name is Heather Haskell. I'm the director of the Art Museums. We have two exhibits that are opening October 5th, Tiffany's Gardens in Glass and Gilded Echoes, the Tiffany influences in Josh Simpson's glasswork.
Who's Josh Simpson?
Josh Simpson is a brilliant glass blower from Shelburne, right here in Western Massachusetts.
Where is Josh Simpson?
Oh, look, I found one right here.
Good afternoon.
Josh, when I heard about this exhibit, I was so excited. You're a huge name in the world of glass, and that our museums here are going to show these parallels between your career in your glass and your influence and Tiffany, who I thought was a 1980s pop star. Turns out, really important name in glass.
Yeah, Tiffany was a huge, amazing glass artist 100 years ago. He was a pioneer and did so much original work. But when I was first starting to blow glass, he was my hero. Even I can clearly remember when I was a little kid, my grandfather used to read to me, and next to where we would sit was an iridescent vase. It had this compelling blue iridescent color that I really loved as a kid and didn't even realize who had made it, but it was a Tiffany vase.
My great-grandmother also had a Tiffany lamp. It's like one of the things that when she passed, I made sure that I had because the rest of my family can't be trusted.
Did Tiffany work in blown glass?
Well, actually, Tiffany was a designer, so he had a glass factory. He had something like 100 glass blowers that worked for him. They made a huge variety of work, from iridescent work to work that was very thick and had flowers, and it became kind of an Art Nouveau style. He did stained glass for churches and for museums and for homes, and he was unique in that he melted original formulas of glass that were different colors that people hadn't seen before. And those colors were melted by a father and son team, Arthur and Leslie Nash. They were glass chemists. So when I started to blow glass, I thought it would be amazing to just try to do something like Tiffany.
Well, we're going to walk through this exhibit here in the Wheeler Gallery, the two exhibits next to each other, Tiffany's Garden in Glass, which opens this Saturday, and Gilded Echoes, the Tiffany influence of Josh Simpson's glass. It says closed, but we were just here with Heather. Where'd she go? Is she going to let us in? Look, I'm following Josh Simpson. Josh Simpson is breaking into your gallery here.
I don't know how to, though.
It's okay, his art's in here.
So, I mean, a lot of what Tiffany is known for is very practical. It's a lamp, like we're looking at right now. It's a stained glass window. What you do doesn't necessarily need to have a practical application to it. It is art in and of itself.
Tiffany, yes, was known for doing utilitarian functional things like lamps and tableware. His work is known as part of the decorative arts, but it's so new and different at the time, 100 years ago. It hadn't been seen before. What's amazing is that glass has been made for at least 2,300 years, and blowpipes were invented about 2,300 years ago. And during the last millennia or two, there have been an amazing number of really talented and intelligent people who've spent their entire lives working in this medium. To come up with something different, something new that hasn't been seen before is really remarkable. And Tiffany did that 100 years ago.
So in your shop in Shelburne, you've got a giant tank, you're gathering the glass, you're blowing into a pipe, you're shaping it into different forms. This lamp, probably not created in that same way.
Can you talk about the difference of creating colored sheets to work with for stained glass as opposed to blowing the entire unit as one?
I have never done stained glass. It actually takes patience. And so for me, immediate gratification is not soon enough. Mm-hmm. Tiffany had a factory that they would melt a furnace full of glass, and then they would put it through steel rollers, so it made it into a flat sheet. Then once the sheet was cooled, they could cut the glass into little pieces, and then, in essence, glue it back together with copper and lead and make it into these beautiful lamp forms. What influenced me about Tiffany was the blown glass, not so much the stained glass. And I think there's part of this exhibit that we'll walk through. These lamps today are they're still incredibly beautiful.
Oh, my word, yeah.
And, of course, they're amazingly valuable.
Heather, how much does a Tiffany lamp go for if I were to try to purchase this from the Springfield Museums?
They're invaluable.
But if you had to put a price tag on it, what's an average, do you even know?
There's certainly hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Makes me wish I got into the lamp making business.
The other thing about like pressed glass like that and stained glass is that it's a lot like yarn dye lots, because it's never quite the same.
Well, and that's because glass is this incredibly precise blend of sand and other minerals that are mined from the earth. And they're melted together to make this incredible material that flows and drips like honey when it's hot.
How hot is it that you're working with? Like, say, the glass that you're working with in your shop?
When I melt sand and minerals together, I get it up to about 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. And then when I actually blow the glass, I bring the temperature down to about 2,100 degrees. It's hot.
Yeah, it's hot. All right, we're entering another gallery. And are we going to try to guess which is yours and which is Tiffany's?
In this gallery, yes, it looks like they have both Tiffany's work, Tiffany blown work, and my work. I haven't seen many of these Tiffany pieces, but this one in particular has this iridescent blue color that's called orine. That's what Tiffany called it. I was so fascinated by that color when I was a little kid that's the first color that I tried to reproduce. And I studied and I tried to figure out how Tiffany had done it. And I found at the Corning Museum of Glass in their library, I found a recording of Tiffany talking about how he made this glass. He describes walking into his factory in Corona, New York, and taking a $20 gold piece, just a gold coin, more than one of his workmen made in a week. And he'd open the door to the furnace and throw the gold coin in. It made it seem that you had to add gold in order to make this magical color. And at the time, when I was living in a teepee in Vermont, when I was first starting, I didn't have any money for gold. But I did have some old silver, and I decided, maybe I'll try putting silver in. And it turns out that, in fact, adding silver will produce this blue color. And so Tiffany was just lying to people, really trying to throw people off the trail. And I just got back on the trail because I was too poor.
What a power move to just walk into the factory where the rest of your workers are working and burn money.
Yeah.
It must have been profound for those guys to watch Tiffany throw 2 weeks' salary into the door of the furnace, and it's just gone.
And the very limited amount of glass blowing I've done, we would try to recreate this sort of Tiffany-style iridescence, and we used a very toxic chemical called stannous chloride. And I remember doing it, they're like, this is going to look really cool, but you better not breathe any of this stuff in.
It's true. It's a complicated way you do this. You add silver to the mix of the glass, and then you expose the glass to a reducing flame in the furnace. So you shut off the oxygen to the furnace, and you have flames coming out of the furnace. It's dramatic. And then you spray the surface of the glass while it's still molten with a weak acid, stannous chloride, tin chloride. And that does create this beautiful iridescent effect. And it is poison.
Which is probably what happened to me and why I am the way that I am.
That's it. Is that the only way?
No, definitely not.
I'm curious about the difference between the iridescent and these blue pieces and those more opalescent ones.
These are Tiffany pieces. I'd like to touch them, but I know somebody at the museum would hit me with a stick.
Maybe can you touch your own glass when you are in a museum?
Actually, I have a funny story about that. I had a show of my work at the LA County Museum of Art in Los Angeles, and I was showing somebody something about a planet, and I reached over to touch the piece, and all these buzzers and lights went off, and security people came and grabbed me. I said, "Don't worry, I made this piece." And they go, "Sure you did."
That is amazing.
So there are different colors of iridescent glass, and it's just involved with what chemistry you add to make the color different. These yellow colors come from just adding pure silver to the glass, actually in the form of silver nitrate. You add that to clear glass, and so it has a yellow hue to it, which is quite beautiful. Actually, if you hold one of these pieces up to the light, in reflected light you see yellow, but in transmitted light, you'll see a reddish hue. So it's dichroic glass. It has two colors. But if you add something that darkens the base glass and then iridize it, it will turn a blue color or a purple color or sometimes greens. It's pretty amazing. There's no question that I totally admire Tiffany, and that's what I tried to emulate when I first started to work. And I'm using the same techniques, the same tools. If somebody from 2,000 years ago walked into my studio today, they could sit at my bench and know exactly what to do with the glass. The tools and techniques and even the formulas of glass have remained essentially unchanged. What's changed is the concept behind what you're doing. When Tiffany was working, there wasn't a space program. The Wright brothers had barely started to fly airplanes. The concept behind my work is if you're looking at my vases or at a large plate of mine, I think that you are looking up into the heavens. You're looking at the sky at night, or you're looking at a Hubble Space Telescope photo, where Tiffany oftentimes had flowers or more earthbound arrangements of design and thought.
Coming up, Live Music Friday with the timeless sound of Jenna Nicholls, who will be at the Egremont Barn with Sean Rowe tomorrow, Saturday, October 5th, and we'll taste the red blends of micro-producer Redolent Wines.
But next, more with glass artist Josh Simpson, collector Jonathan Oakleaf, who just donated a very large amount of Simpson's work to the Springfield Museums, and curator Maggie North about the details in the new exhibit at Springfield Museums, Gilded Echoes.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
At the new exhibit at the Springfield Museums, Gilded Echoes, the Tiffany influence in Josh Simpson's glasswork with Josh Simpson. It opens this weekend, and we're looking at some Tiffany glass versus Josh Simpson's glass right next to it.
Have you met Maggie?
Hi, Maggie.
Hi, it's so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Maggie North. I'm the guest curator of this exhibition and a former curator here at the Springfield Museum. So it's a pleasure to be back and to work not only with this amazing collection, but to work with Tiffany glass and to have you all here. I hope that many folks will come to see the show.
It opens this weekend at the Springfield Museums. Josh Simpson, you were saying you brought one of your longest running patrons here who's partly responsible for the show, right?
Yes, I'd like you to meet Jonathan Oakleaf, who has been collecting my work for something like 30 years, maybe it's longer. Jonathan's been, a diehard collector, and he's donated virtually his entire collection to the Springfield Museum. When you look at the whole collection of the pieces that he's collected, you sort of get an idea of his viewpoint as a collector.
Jonathan, where are you from?
I live in Canton, Connecticut.
What turned you on to the work of Josh Simpson so early on in his career?
How much time you got?
Well, I'm really good at editing, so as much as you need.
I was on Cape Cod with my family. The kids wanted to go to P-Town. There was a gallery at one end of the street that was a glass gallery. We saw some pieces in the window. They were beyond our budget at that point in time, and I said we could find them cheaper down the street. No. So we went back and we bought one. And we took it back to the room, and we were enjoying it. The next day, the kids wanted to go back up to P-Town. The boss said she wanted to lie by the beach. I said, cool. And I bought another one and didn't tell her. And blew the dinner budget for the week. But it's been great fun. I have studied Josh, and I'm a knowledge junkie. So I wanted to see the artist's work from the very beginning to last week. The collection really is a statement to his process and his thinking as to what he wanted to do and what he was trying to accomplish. Why it's all here now is my wife said, we don't want it. What are you going to do with it? So I made a phone call, and Heather answered the phone. I said, Heather, I've got a little Simpson. Would you be interested? And she said, I will take anything Simpson. My response was, Heather, I got a lot of anything.
How much of the anything are we going to see in this exhibit?
So there are about 35 pieces on view in this exhibition. That's a combination of a few Tiffany works, but mostly the bulk of the exhibition is works by Josh Simpson. And while the exhibition focuses on the early part of Josh's career, which he's been describing, we'll also have a few works that are later pieces, which signify a mature vision of glass, featuring pieces like the New Mexico glass, which is the name for this amazing blue starry glass that Josh Simpson makes, as well as Corona pieces.
Stuff done during the pandemic?
Maybe I'll turn that over to Josh. The name Corona is one that has taken on new significance in 2020, but actually, Josh had a much different vision for it beforehand.
Yeah, I've experimented with adding chemistry. That is, if you add a metallic oxide, like iron oxide will make a beautiful green color in glass, but any metal oxide added to glass will make a color. You can actually add uranium if you can find it. At any rate, I've experimented with trying to melt new and different colors. And along the way, amazingly enough, in spite of the fact that so many people have worked in glass, I've invented a couple of colors that had never been seen before. One of them is what I call New Mexico glass. And if you have a great imagination, you can imagine that you're looking up at a perfect night sky. And my Corona glass, I actually called it Corona glass in the early 1990s when I figured out how to do it. And then I didn't know I was a marketing genius. When the Corona pandemic came along, I thought, gosh, I've got to change the name.
Crown and Corona existed before the pandemic did. Also, is the chemical combination that you do for your Corona glass like putting a lime in and turning it upside down?
No salt either. The Corona glass is just this complicated formula of tin and silver and cobalt and copper and a bunch of other stuff. I'd like to tell you what it is, but I have to kill you.
Oh, okay. I'm willing to be the sacrifice needed to get that information out there.
I have a curation question for you about the acquisition of the stained glass, which is making up most of the Tiffany exclusive exhibit, versus the smaller pieces that are a part of this exhibit. Was it harder to get access to one over the other?
Well, the Tiffany exhibition comes to the Springfield Museums from the New Stack collection, so those are pieces that are on loan to the Springfield Museums. The individual works that are on view in Gilded Echoes, however, are works that belong to the Springfield Museums, and they really are, due to the generosity of Jonathan Oakleaf and Katie Oakleaf, here to be shared now for generations to come. That's the joy of curatorial work, is that you can tell stories through objects. That's an exciting part about having an incredible artist who's right here in Western Massachusetts to help us tell this story of glassmaking.
I think part of what I love about living here in Western Massachusetts is the fact that we do have beautiful night skies. And what's interesting about a glass studio is glass furnaces are kind of like farm animals. You have to pay attention to them day and night. So the last thing I do before I go to bed every night, the first thing I do in the morning is I go out to the studio to check on my furnaces. And sometimes when I'm doing special colors or melting special melts of glass, I need to walk out to the studio at 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning. And I think that's how I got to appreciate the night sky. Because sometimes I'll go out and there's a thunderstorm developing down the valley or an aurora borealis in the sky. I think that's part of the reason that that kind of effect comes out in my work that I'm trying to recreate.
Josh Simpson, legendary glass artist from Shelburne, who has an exhibit, Gilded Echoes, the Tiffany influence in Josh Simpson's glasswork, next to another exhibit of Tiffany's wonderful stained glass and lamps. You also have 2 new books out, one of which chronicles your 50-year history, which Jonathan, the collector, who's responsible for this, has chronicled in real time in some ways. Tell us about that book.
About a year ago, actually, my 50-year book came out. It's this huge book. It weighs a ton. It's something like 300 pages. So it chronicles my beginnings of when I started to blow glass and was living in a teepee in northern Vermont. I started by literally renting 50 acres of land for $22.50 a month, taking my entire life savings out of the bank of $306, sewing together a teepee to live on that land and constructing a studio. And that book follows my career through literally until last year when it was printed. But the newest book actually is a book by Sue Reed, who is a landscape architect. It's called Hide One, Keep One. It's about this sort of wacky project that I've had going for 40 years now. When I first moved to Shelburne in 1976, I discovered several handmade marbles in the flower beds outside my kitchen door. When I brought them in and washed them off, I realized they were just as bright and beautiful as the summer afternoon they went missing maybe 70 years before when kids were called in for supper. And it made me think about the longevity of glass, the fact that glass, if left undisturbed in the ground, will last for tens or hundreds or thousands of years. And that made me realize that glass in museums from ancient Roman times wasn't preserved carefully by collectors. It was dug up by archaeologists. And so I thought at the time, in the 1970s, people weren't collecting my glass. No museums had my glass. And I thought, I should hedge my bets. I'll hide my work around the world for archaeologists to find, and somehow that way I'll get into museums maybe long after I'm dead. And so I began to literally hide little spheres that I made that I called planets. And the reason I started making planets is because when I moved to Shelburne, one of the school teachers in town asked me if I'd be willing to demonstrate glassmaking to all the 8th graders in the county. And I readily agreed, not really realizing that inadvertently I'd agreed to have something like 15 to 50 8th graders in my studio every Wednesday afternoon for months. Now, I don't know if you've ever known an 8th grader, but these are people who will suffer no boredom in their lives whatsoever. And they weren't the least bit interested in watching me make vases or bowls or bottles or goblets, but they did like it when I started making marbles for them. And so I'd make cat's eye marbles or swirly marbles. But then one night before they came, I thought about the iconic photo that Bill Anders took on the Apollo 8 mission, where they rounded the moon and took a photograph of our Earth from the moon. That photograph is so beautiful. You realize that our Earth, that seems so vast and limitless, is only as big as a little blue marble floating in the black void of space. And so the next day, instead of making marbles for these kids, I made a planet. That's how I started making planets. And I began to hide those planets. I at first gave them to kids, only I realized those kids were going to lose their marbles. And then I started hiding them around the world. And so this book, Hide One, Keep One, it has to do with my Infinity Project, the project that I've done for the last 40 years to hide my work around the world.
If we read this book, do we get clues to where to find this glass?
This predates geocaching by 30 years. But you might get some ideas. Like there's actually several in the Marianas Trench. It's only 20,000 feet under the water. Some of these are meant to be found right away. They've been put out in front of the museum. And
here at the Springfield Museums?
There might be some.
Oh.
And ideally, there's something that you might find by accident. You might find one underneath a tree or under a rock or something like that. They're an anonymous gift, a non-transactional gift to somebody in the future. And none of them are signed. They all have an infinity symbol on the bottom. So they're meant to be some intriguing little gift to give to somebody at some point whenever they're discovered.
Feels like Willy Wonka and the Golden Ticket.
People now go to my website, fill in places where they'd like to hide a planet, and if we like their idea, we'll send them 2 planets, one to keep and one to hide. So there are literally thousands of them around the world now. They're on Mount Everest, they're at K2, they're at the bottom of the ocean, they're at the North Pole, and in Antarctica. You have to get the book, check it out.
I'm betting that there's a lot because 8th grade, as you mentioned, 8th graders lose things, and some of those are now for future generations.
Yeah, whether they wanted to be or not.
Actually, for many years, along with giving candy out at Halloween, we also give infinity planets to kids.
I'm coming to trick or treat at your house.
You definitely should.
And there will be one planet on view in this exhibition, and it's a planet with a very special history. It was made actually as a kind of marble for Bert Cohen, who is a marble collector.
That's completely new news to me. I didn't realize that. Bert Cohen was this amazing guy. He's the guy that popularized the hula hoop in the 60s. And he was this really interesting guy, but he loved marbles. And I made a special marble for him at one point in time that was actually larger than any one that I'd ever made at that point. And so I didn't realize the museum had that one.
We're really excited to have this piece. It's a special work, I think, in the history of Josh's incredible output. And of course, it comes to us by way of Jonathan Oakleaf. Pun intended, maybe a full circle moment.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one making those puns. The exhibit opens this weekend. Josh Simpson and the staff of the museum, and Jonathan, thank you all so much for giving us this tour of your impressions on Tiffany glass and your influence from Tiffany glass.
Thank you for having me. You should tell people that they can go to my website, and if they have an idea of a place where they'd like to hide a planet, to write to us, and we check that email every day, and if we like your idea, we'll actually send you 2, one to keep and one to hide.
We made it through the entire interview without me talking about your wife who's an astronaut.
No, we didn't.
The exhibit opens tomorrow, Saturday, October 5th. Find more information on Springfield Museum's website. And Josh Simpson's new book is available at bookstores everywhere and on his website as well. Thanks to both for letting us preview the beautiful works on display.
Live Music Friday with the Timeless Folk of Jenna Nicholls is coming up shortly after we guess what's in our glasses in a blind tasting with redolent wines at Dare Bottle Shop and Provisions in Lenox.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar, helping customers make the switch to solar for savings, energy security, and tax incentives. Learn more at northeast-solar.com. NEPM's podcasts are funded by Armbrook Village Senior Living in Westfield, with support services designed to help seniors age in place, including a Compass Memory Support Neighborhood. More at armbrookvillage.com.
Back in the Wine Thunderdome at our favorite Berkshire County wine tasting location, Dare Bottle Shop and Provisions in Lenox with Mary Dare, and Ben Dare is way over there. Hey, Ben Dare. You're not going to come drink with us? You're going to wander in the back?
No, I won't do it in the back.
All right, you're going to make sure the store keeps running.
Yes.
But Mary Dare, who have you invited with us to drink in the Thunderdome today?
We are super excited to have Boyd Pearson here from Redolent Wine Co. And of course, we have our best friend Emerson Stevens from Cafe Europa. He does an incredible job. One of our favorite wine reps showing us some of our favorite wines that we stock here at the shop, and Boyd is part of his portfolio.
Nice. And Emerson, you're part, or at least we're part, of the rock scene in the Valley.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I did have some time in the Valley rock scene.
Yeah, what bands again?
Bunny's a Swine. Bunny's a Swine was
For the first Happy Valley Showdown.
You still, somebody still feels bitter.
Everything tastes bitter.
I'm not bitter about losing. I'm bitter about
Them winning.
No, about what somebody said in our review. They're
Oh.
like, pop music doesn't belong here, and I'm like, you shut up now.
I think the bitterness is fine. Bunny's a Swine was known for not trying very hard.
Well, let's throw your pearls before swine, Boyd. You are a winemaker from the Pacific Northwest. Tell us about Redolent Wines and what you're doing.
So Redolent Wine Company is a project with me and my partner, John Larson. We're co-winemakers. We do everything. We're what's called a micro-negociant, a small production winery where we buy grapes from around the Pacific Northwest and make a bunch of fun, creative wines. We make wine in a custom crush facility with 7 other wineries. We're all very, very small. This vintage, we made around 1,500 cases. To put that in perspective, the average winery is a little over 10,000 cases. So,
Why did you call it Redolent Wine?
I was an English major, and that's probably why I'm in wine, because my dad told me to be an English major, you weren't going to make any money. He's proven correct. But redolent is a word that means a smell or a taste that brings back a memory. And for me, my favorite thing about wine is sharing it with other people, and the experience of, like, I can think of bottles that Emerson and I, we were actually remembering a wine from Peter Lauer that we had when we first hung out together, and that idea of you can have this taste and it takes you back to a place and time.
Redolent is a word that shows up often in wine reviews. Because your winery is called Redolent, does it mean that you cannot use this word when trying to describe your wine?
No, I use it all the time. If you subscribe...
Is that in any way confusing to anyone?
I'm sure it is, but if you were to subscribe to my newsletter, which please do sign up for the newsletter, I am punning on Redolent all the time.
Mary Dear, why is this kind of wine something that you like to carry at your shop here in Lenox?
Redolent Wine Co. It's the epitome of what we represent here in the shop. Human scale, small scale, wines that are made by real people, and we know the process behind, and these are the products that we can stand behind and then share with our customers.
We've got 2 of your wines, Boyd, in paper bags. Yes. So we're going to blind taste
I love
this.
blind tastings. They're so much fun.
So what do you want to tell us about these 2 wines in paper bags?
To tell you as little as possible.
I agree with that.
But I'll tell you this. One of the wines is called Sister from Another Mister, and one of the wines is called Brother from Another Mother. We created the first wine in 2017. It's a little bit of a divisive time. Sadly, I think we're still living in some divisive times, but we like to believe, let's try and love each other. We're all brothers from another mother. We're all sisters from another mister. But I'll just say that one of the wines is a co-fermentation of Pinot Noir and Nebbiolo, and one of the wines is a blend of Sangiovese and Syrah. And we'll leave it there.
So, before either of these get poured, I have an idea of how I'm going to know which one's which, and I think I already do.
Just from first pour. Like,
Just from the way it looks.
I mean, like, color-wise, this is very, very light.
Yeah, all of the things that they teach you about how to blind taste. It's not all about just smell and taste. A lot of it has to do with the look and the color of the wine. And this first one is very, very light in color. If I wore a watch, I'd be able to see the hands of my watch through it. And the other one is extraordinarily darker.
Yes. Yes,
we don't even need to smell or taste them unless you're doing something absolutely crazy in the Pacific Northwest. I already know where we're at.
These are pretty obvious.
The trickery is over already. I don't want to ascribe gender to grapes, and I think it gets done too often. However, if I were to guess which one's called Sister from Another Mister, it's probably this lighter, more delicate one, unless you're upending the gender norms with the wine.
Clearly cannot pick the wine in front of me.
You're just stalling now.
You'd like to think that, wouldn't you?
But no, that is the brother from another mother. Is the Nebbiolo and Pinot Noir. That was our first creation. Again, it was created because we were trying to create something in the spirit of brotherly love. My business partner and I are often considered to be brothers, even though we're not brothers. But when you work with someone for 10 years, you become kind of like family. So he's my brother from another mother.
Yeah.
And then we were researching Nebbiolo production. One of the articles when we translated from Italian to English said that Nebbiolo was kind of like Pinot Noir's brother from another mother. So we were like, oh, this is the perfect name for this. So we started showing that wine around the country and showing it around Portland. And people were like, brother needs a sister. And they kept saying, sister should be this little pink wine. And like they kept saying pink wine, and it was really irritating to us. And I went to my wife, and she was like, yeah, welcome to being a woman. So really, everything has to be pink. And we were like, screw that, we're gonna make it the biggest wine we make. So we're doing Sangiovese and Syrah.
That is so badass. What a wonderful thing to do with your wine labels. I'm so glad I was wrong in the guessing of the name of it, even though I was right in the guessing of which one's the Pinot Noir and Nebbiolo.
You're not the first. But yeah, we love that. Just like, no, because women have a lot of power.
Yeah.
So.
Unless like we're going to like for the thickness, in which case this one's the lady wine for sure. The darker
I'll let you say that.
Well, I'm starting out with the lighter one, which is the Pinot Noir Nebbiolo.
For Pacific Northwest, like Nebbiolo and Sangiovese are not the grapes that I usually hear about. Did you always want to work with Italian grapes, or was it just a thing and the mixture that jumped out at you?
We've always been inspired by Italian wines. We love Nebbiolo. There's only about 200 acres of Nebbiolo even planted in the United States, so it's a very, very small option to even pick for grapes. In Oregon and Washington, there's some out in the Columbia River Gorge, so we source our Nebbiolo from the Washington side of the Columbia River, but it's in the Columbia Gorge. It was planted in 2002, and then we started making some Nebbiolo, just straight Nebbiolo, but it takes 4 years to produce the Nebbiolo that we make. And as a small business starting out, to spend all your money to buy the grapes, make the wine, and then have to wait 4 years to make $1 from it, we were like, this is going to fail. Our project's going to fail. So then the first thing we did was create a little rosé, and then it was just John and I sitting around, and we were like, what can we do that could be a fun, easy drinking, really kind of crushable wine? And we were like, what if we co-fermented? Well, first we thought, what if we blended Pinot Noir and Nebbiolo? And then John had the idea of being like, what if we co-fermented them? Like kind of like Passe Grand from Burgundy. And so the challenge is Nebbiolo ripens really late, and Pinot can get ripe a little earlier than that. So what we do is let the Pinot get a little riper maybe than we would normally pick to make our straight Pinot, and pick the Nebbiolo a little earlier, and then we layer in the grapes into the fermenter together. So we do like a layer of Pinot, a layer of Nebbiolo, and then we co-ferment, and we age them in all neutral French oak to be a fun, fresh, easy drinking. As you can see, it can kind of go with anything. I mean, this is like a burger, a pizza.
Yeah.
It can go with anything.
It's really light and refreshing.
Oh, yeah.
It's delicious.
But you really, even despite its lightness, the Nebbiolo really makes itself known, especially as it finishes. You get that very classic kind of leathery, gritty tannin of Nebbiolo. So a light wine that has a lot of structure and some guts in the back end to it.
Yeah, light without being thin. I love wines like this. Right, there's a wine called Poulsard from the Jura that this kind of is redolent of.
Yes! Shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
I've got all the puns.
I love you already, Boyd.
And as far as the Sangiovese, when we were searching for a sister, we were trying to think, our brand is sort of built around an Italian grape and then mostly French grapes. So we wanted to keep it kind of consistent with an Italian grape and a French grape. And we were tasting a bunch of Italian wines, and we had Super Tuscans, and we were like, oh, Sangiovese and Syrah, Super Tuscan, Super Sister. Let's make a sister from another mister.
And for people that don't know about Super Tuscans, I mean, Sangiovese is the grape of Chianti, but people have been experimenting with it and adding all these other types of grapes that aren't traditionally found in that area, and they've started calling it a Super Tuscan, and it's been wildly successful.
I think one point to sort of fine tune too is that we mentioned that some of these are Columbia Valley grapes, but what's really unique about both of these wines, they do something you don't see very often in the U.S. They actually are crossing state lines. So in this case, it's Pinot Noir from Willamette Valley in Oregon, it's the Nebbiolo from Columbia Gorge in Washington State, and then same thing, the Syrah is coming from Willamette Valley in the sister, the Pinot Noir is coming from Columbia Valley in Washington.
So is that considered a new viticultural region? Is there a way to classify it, or
really
is it
like
unclassifiable?
At this point, it's just American wine is what they call it. And in France, they call it vin de France. Right. It's kind of a new thing. I mean, there are a few people playing around with it, but we thought that was interesting as well. And so we were like, just because no one's doing it, why shouldn't we do it? We have this really neat region in Oregon where the Columbia River cuts through the Columbia River Gorge, and there's vineyards planted on either side, so we can play with that a lot. And it gives us something new and different, which is really cool.
We're at Dare Bottle Shop and Provisions in Lenox, where we're talking with the winemaker Boyd Pearson from Redolent Wines and our friend Emerson from Cafe Europa, as well as the Dares, Mary and Ben Dare. What do you think about these wines there, Ben Dare?
The first one is fantastic.
Do you feel good about your native country's Pinot Noir being blended with my family's historical grape of Nebbiolo?
Yes, and
I do too.
But I think Pinot Noir come first.
And I'll go with Nebbiolo.
Actually, I do like Pinot Noir better, but I can't betray my people. Fredo, you're my older brother, and I love you. But don't ever take sides with anyone against the family again.
Well, let's try the Sister from Another Mister.
The brother was like all funk and cherries, which is like I quite like, and this is so much bigger fruit.
A little bit almost like bloody, but violets. And this is a wine I think you can have with braises and stews and a lot of heavier fare. Also good with like sharp cheeses and things like that.
Syrah does wild things aromatically. It's such a crazy grape.
A lot of non-fruit flavors that are really compelling.
I feel like my description to differentiate which one was going to be the sister from another mister was absolutely on point for how it tastes.
Yeah, THICC, right?
You're not wrong.
But it's not flabby is what I like. I mean, like, that was something that I wanted.
Thick, but not flabby.
Yeah.
Oh, Khalees is going to spit take. Regain composure. We're back. And we're back. The label on this is such a glorious purple color. I love it.
And if you read on the back, that's kind of like our homage. You know, it's for brother. It says 50% Pinot Noir and 50% Nebbiolo, Oregon and Washington, forest and desert. Fear not the other. We are all brothers from another mother.
Aww.
And the sister is 50% Sangiovese and 50% Syrah, Washington and Oregon, river and mountain, power and beauty and unity. We are all sisters from another mister.
I love it. You got to get a third one here, brother from another planet, and go real crazy with what you're going to put in that one.
Give me 5, brother. White folks get strange all the time.
It's John Sayles' dazzling and propelling comedy hit.
When you make wine, everyone asks you what your favorite is. And I don't have children, but I think it's a lot like asking who your favorite child is. And I do think parents always do have a favorite child.
Oh yeah, Enzo.
But as far as the wine I drink the most of, it's the brother. Just it's so easy to drink.
I think leaner styled wines like this too. I mean, this is sort of where my palate gravitates toward. Yes, they're more drinkable, they're more approachable, but also in a lighter wine, there's often this more space for kind of complexity to sort of unfurl, you know? And sometimes bigger wines, there's a lot right up front, and they can sort of fall short in terms of depth.
Dare Bottle Shop and Provisions, Lenox. 2 wines from Redolent Wines, and the winemaker himself, Boyd Pearson, tasting us on Brother from Another Mother and Sister from Another Mister. But the Wine Thunderdome insists upon voting for which one we would want to take home with us today. Ben Dare, what do you think? Sister from Another Mister, the Sangiovese and Syrah blend from the Pacific Northwest. Mary Dare, you got to vote?
I'm going with Brother from Another Mother.
Emerson?
I'm gonna vote brother, but I'm also gonna say that I'm very conflicted. I think that I'm a leaner wine guy, but I think that the sister is just showing so well. It's decadent.
You're gonna make me vote.
Yeah. Which child do you like best? It's Pax.
To me, this is really hard, but the one, like I said, the one I drink the most is the brother. But I love you, sister.
I vote sister.
So that's 2 for brother and 2 for sister.
Monty, here's a tiebreaker.
He's gonna vote brother.
Here's the thing. Exactly like Emerson said, most of the time, what I want is Brother from Another Mother. I want those light wines. I want Pinot Noir is my favorite red grape.
Yeah.
Nebbiolo, another one of my favorite red grapes. But right now, which is all that matters in the Thunderdome, what do you want more of right now? And it's Sister from Another Mister.
Oh,
love it.
Which is the winner.
One wins.
The thick one wins.
For thick ones.
You go, sister.
No, that's not okay.
I meant about the wine. I meant the wine.
White folks get strange all the time.
And now for a little night music in the afternoon with folk artist Jenna Nicholls.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
NEPM's podcasts are funded by Armbrook Village Senior Living in Westfield, with support services designed to help seniors age in place, including a Compass Memory Support Neighborhood. More at armbrookvillage.com. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass 5 College Credit Union, offering co-op advantage checking with cash back on all purchases, plus secure debit card controls, all from the UMass 5 mobile banking app. Insured by NCUA, umass5.coop.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. It's Live Music Friday, and we welcome multi-instrumentalist Jenna Nicholls. Jenna has a double bass of NYC and the Hudson Valley and has been garnering the attention of music lovers since she arrived on New York's Lower East Side. From cowboys to piggy banks to lifelong loves, there's a tint of the vintage in her songs and in her sound.
Recently, Jenna has toured with Ingrid Michaelson, shared the stage with Oscar Winner Glen Hansard, Amanda Palmer, Lucius, and Joan as Policewoman. Jenna has performed in venues all across the country, including the Beacon Theater and Carnegie Hall. And tomorrow she'll grace the stage of Egremont Barn alongside previous Live Music Friday guest Sean Rowe. Welcome for Live Music Friday, Jenna Nicholls.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
Thrilled to have you. Let's start out with a song.
Oh, great. This song is called You, Me, and the Moon. The world is asleep. It's just you and me and the moon tonight. The stars are aligned. It's a heavenly sign that the moment's right. Here we are, each alone, with no one to dance with. Maybe I could be the one you find romance with. I try to speak, I'm weak in the knees, and my words won't spark. You take my hand, I fall into your arms. I dreamed of this last night. Two wandering hearts unite. It's just you and me and the moon tonight. I dreamed of this last night. Two wandering hearts unite. It's just you and me and the moon tonight.
Lovely.
That was gorgeous.
Yes. Jenna Nicholls, who's playing at the Egremont Barn with Sean Rowe tomorrow, joins us for Live Music Friday today.
Yay.
You play ukulele as well
I
as
do.
guitar. Which
Yes.
one do you find easier to compose with?
That's a really interesting question because depending on what instrument I'm playing, the song will probably come out in a completely different style. Like I like to write a lot of jazz on the ukulele. It's a pretty easy instrument to work your way around and to figure things out. And then on classical guitar, I usually would write something a little bit more mellow, like you just heard. And then when I play acoustic or a steel string guitar, it has like a little bit more of a cowboy folk, like straight on acoustic folk kind of vibe. Then there's piano, and then it gets into a whole different thing. So, I mean, the instrument really dictates what I'm gonna do for sure.
Do you take the instrument and create off of that, or do you have an idea and say, I'm going to create it for this instrument?
The instrument kind of, it just, because usually what I'm doing is I'll just be messing around on whatever instrument I'm playing, and I know certain voicings on each different instrument, and that kind of dictates where I'm going to go. So occasionally I'll have a line or two that I want to work something out on, and in that case, I would do the reverse of that and make the words and everything and have the piano fit what I already have in my head. But a lot of times it's just basically what's happening with the instrument, and then I write around that.
I saw in a clip that you had written all of this music for a cowboy musical.
Yes.
Is anything going to become of it? Because I know it didn't.
Yes.
Oh, good.
And that one of the songs that song that I just played is actually a part of that series. It was the ballad from the musical.
What's the name of it?
That is called You, Me, and the Moon, the song. But the musical itself didn't have a name. It was just in the early, conception stages. And there wasn't a book yet or anything.
Right.
And so the gentleman who had asked me to write for it, he told me the premise, and then COVID happened. And so, as most things did at that time, everything kind of got shelved.
Or you can think of it as you got all this extra time to work.
I have all these, yeah. And but now I have all these cowboy songs, and it really set the stage for a lot of what I'm doing right now. So it was a really great experience, and I have no regrets about it at all.
So we're not going to see any incarnation of it, or is there some?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe someday. But I've recorded all of them, so they'll be on an album versus maybe being in a musical on the stage. Like they will be heard.
Oh, good. I want to see a cowboy musical on the stage.
I know. It would be really great.
Because there's only a handful, and they're all really old.
We need a new cowboy
musical.
What appeals about such a classic sound in the way that you write?
I grew up listening to or watching a lot of Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers movies. And so, the composers for those movies were like Irving Berlin and George Gershwin and Hoagy Carmichael. And so, there's the movie Top Hat with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. I have probably seen that movie 500,000 times. and I will still continue to watch it, and it will never be old to me. But, when you're growing up and you're listening to that kind of music, it really lays the foundations for how you're going to create your own music. It's a building block for you. So I was definitely influenced by a lot of those movies from the early 30s and 40s, and they have that classic style. And there is really kind of I don't want to say a formula. That's not really the best way to put it. But there's a sequence to those songs that makes a lot of sense to me. And so it allows me to more easily write in that way, just because that's what I'm used to hearing.
Well, we don't want to run out of time before we hear another song. So let's have Jenna Nicholls, who's playing at Egremont Barn tomorrow, do another one for us here.
Okay, great. Let me just grab my other guitar. All right.
Moving on. We're
moving on to the steel string.
Nice.
All right.
Beautiful guild.
This is my husband's guitar. I took it today. He doesn't know. He's gonna know. All right.
Holy Moses, lead me home, hold me close, don't let me go. In my mind I've lost my way, in your arms I long to stay. Shelter me from the rain, under your wing I'm home again. Save me once, come save again. Show me the way, show me the way, my sweet consolation is to have you lay me down with no words of
Jenna Nicholls, Live Music Friday on the Fabulous 413, playing with Sean Rowe tomorrow at the Egremont Barn. You can also catch her at the Dreamaway later this month. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Our pleasure.